My granny passed away earlier this year, and man, what I wouldn't give to cook with her one more time. Every time you cooked with or for her, it was an exercise in patience. She would sit at the counter and comment or criticize on everything you were doing, despite if it was wrong or right. Comments like, huh? Or you're gonna do it that way were really, really common. And that's the thing about grief, is you find yourself missing weird little things that used to really bug you. She would make the funniest mac and cheese, which was essentially just Velveeta and whole milk. And we would go outside, play in the Texas heat all day, come inside and eat a bowl of that. At the service a few months ago, we had a good laugh about the fact that we would eat that and we would love it. And my stomach hurts just thinking about it. I wanted to pay homage to Granny in the best way I knew how, which is making a version of her recipe she probably wouldn't approve of and would probably criticize. So I'm going to show you her original way and then the way I make it now as an adult who, despite having a major aversion to dairy, still loves mac and cheese after a long day.
The Velveeta recipe is smooth and cheesy, but it's important to note that Granny didn't use any seasoning other than pepper, so I'm going to hold myself to that for both recipes. Also, she always used ditalini as the pasta of choice. I'm not sure why, but I'll stick with tradition today. The recipe for Granny's mac is about as simple as it can be, so I'll put the measurements on screen. In the meantime, I wanted to share with you some of my favorite Granny stories. Granny was always hardcore. She didn't take lip from anybody, and she wore a fanny pack everywhere she went. Sometimes the fanny pack had a gun in it, sometimes it was filled with bingo daubers. I really don't think anybody loved bingo as much as she did. For some background, my mom's parents moved to our town when I was in 7th grade. This was incredibly exciting for me as a middle schooler who really loved time with his grandparents. They had lived in Las Vegas before this, so time with them was always really exciting. When they moved, I would spend the night at their place regularly. Friday nights, I'd bring my PS2 or GameCube over and play games with Granny while chugging endless amounts of cherry Coke. On Saturday, we'd get up early and work in the backyard till I was drenched in sweat. Time to chug more cherry Coke. When it was time to head home, Granny would drive me and we'd stop at Taco Bell almost every time. She was a woman who knew what she wanted, so she would get her soft tacos with double meat. It's a baller move. I still attribute my love of Taco Bell to her today. Grandpa passed away a year later, and I was way too young to comprehend how life-shattering it would be to lose your partner. Soon after he died, Granny found a dog in the neighborhood that she named Rusty, and he helped her immensely with the grieving process. My dad always said that if he was reincarnated, he would want to come back as a dog in our family because they are treated like royalty. When I was in high school, Granny had moved in with us, so I got plenty of time with her. She had the tendency of picking on me, and I would pick back. We were constantly bickering, but in a sort of loving way. I think she needed someone to spar with after Grandpa died, and I'm not one to back down from a family argument. During my sophomore year, Granny and I took a road trip from Houston to Cleveland, Ohio, and it was quite the experience. We yelled at the Garmin's poor directions, ate too much Taco Bell, and Granny tried to get us to stay in a hotel attached to a strip club. Good times. I guess this is a cooking channel, so I can talk about cooking for like a second. It had been probably 12 years since I'd eaten this mac and cheese, and I wasn't sure if I would like it. This is probably the nostalgia talking, but I kinda loved it. There's something special about a recipe that is legitimately 3 ingredients, and it turns out quite nicely. The texture here is really what you're making it for. Velveeta creates a smooth cheese sauce like none other. Simply boil the noodles, mix the Velveeta into whole milk, and I'm not even sure this constitutes as a recipe. With my version, I wanted to focus on 2 key things: getting a similar texture to Granny's mac and cheese, and not overpowering the cheese flavor. For the cheeses, I went with an even split of smoked Gouda and medium cheddar. For the noodles, I usually go with fusilli or cavatappi, something that's going to hold on to the sauce nicely. To achieve this beautiful texture, I'll be using sodium citrate, the emulsifying salt that gives Velveeta its velvety mouthfeel. This can be used in place of roux when you need a luxurious cheese sauce. If you've ever tried melting cheese directly into a liquid, you know how bad that can turn out. Using sodium citrate allows the cheese to melt directly into and emulsify into the liquid. It's basically magic. Okay, you guys watch the cooking, back to Granny. She was always in and around the kitchen, and I think that has a lot to do with her relationship with my grandpa. He came from a very Italian family. His name was Michelangelo Wedo, an Italian name if I've ever heard one. Granny carried on so many recipes and traditions like the Feast of 7 Fishes or no sugar in the spaghetti sauce. Ooh, sorry about that one. Granny could really be stern, and her resting face was a little bit of a stank face, but she was always so much fun to be around. Her stories were always insane and showed that she was much more hardcore than anyone. When she got an ingrown toenail, she would just have the doctors remove her toenails, same with cavities in her teeth. Like I said, she was hardcore, but her intensity probably showed how much she loved us. Granny always showed up for us. She always cared, and so much of who she was shown through her actions, like cooking a delicious meal for all of us to share together. feel like even though I got so much time with her, I will always wish there was more. Time is so precious, and I just have to remind myself of how blessed I was to get a close relationship with my granny. Not everyone lives with a grandparent or gets to go on big adventures like a road trip with them. Not everyone gets to laugh or argue with someone in the way that I was able to with Granny. There are tons of things about Granny I didn't tell here, like our time at Kashada for her 85th birthday, or when we went ice fishing in the Arctic blast, but maybe I'll share those stories one day. For anyone watching who knows Granny, I'd love to see stories of her in the comments of this video. If you didn't know Granny, comment with your favorite memory of your grandparents. I hope this video is an uplifting reminder that even though our time together here isn't forever, the impact you can make by simply loving people can't be understated. Cheers.